Five Dogs You'll Never Forget. 5 True Dog Stories by Margaret Davison. Docs, the greatest dog detective in the world. The policeman just happened to be passing a pet store one day. He looked in and saw a roly-poly German Shepherd pup in the window, and the pup looked back at him. The man wasn't even thinking of buying a dog, but a few minutes later he came out of the shop with the dog in his arms. "It was love at first sight," Giovanni Memon said to his friends, and he named his new pet Docs. Memon worked as a policeman in the city of Turin, Italy. He decided to train Docs to help him in his work. Docs was a very smart dog, and he, like most dogs, had a good sense of smell. Memon wanted to train Docs to find hidden things, jewels or money or people. Memon worked Docs as much as he could. First, he took a handkerchief and a cigarette case. They both belonged to someone Docs didn't know, and they carried the person's own special smell. Memon hid the cigarette case behind the cushion of a big, overstuffed chair. He let Docs snuff the handkerchief. "Find it, boy," he said. Of course, Docs didn't understand, not at first. So Memon led the dog to the overstuffed chair. He lifted the cushion, and there was the cigarette case. Docs sniffed at it. "Good boy," Memon said, as if Docs had found it by himself. Very soon, Docs understood exactly what was going on. Every time his master asked him to sniff something and then said, "Find it," Docs knew he must find something that smelled the same. Of course, it was still just a game they were playing. Then one day a jewelry store was robbed. The thief escaped with many fine jewels. He'd left nothing behind except a dirty old glove. Memon decided to take the dog along. It was time to test the dog on a real case. When they got to the jewelry store, several other policemen were already there. One looked up and said with a grin, "Oh, I see you've brought Docs. Do you think he can lend us a paw?" Everyone laughed. Everyone except for Memon. Quietly he asked for the glove. He let Docs sniff it. Then he said, "Find him, Docs." First, Docs sniffed across the floor of the jewelry store. Out the door he ran, followed by Memon and several other policemen. Docs moved slowly but steadily for several blocks. Then he came to a big highway. He started down it one way. He stopped. The busy highway was filled with so many smells: gasoline fumes and grass and rubber tires and trees. How could he possibly smell the special glove smell? But he did. Docs sniffed by the side of the road for a minute or two. Then he set off in the other direction. He never lost the trail again. At last he turned off the highway into a narrow side street. Docs led them into one of the houses on the street and sat down on the porch. Memon knocked on the door. His knock was answered by a woman with a baby in her arms. "What do you want?" she snapped. The policeman explained. "There's no one here," she answered, "except for her." She jiggled the baby in her arms. "My husband's in jail." But Memon was still suspicious. After all, Docs had led them right to this house. He and the other policemen kept checking. They soon found out that the woman was lying. Her husband had been in jail, but now he was out. A few days later, the police caught him in a nearby town. He soon admitted that he had robbed the jewelry store. Then he had gone home for a few minutes to say goodbye to his wife and child. Docs had solved his first case. So the career of Docs, the dog detective, began. Before long, the police in other towns heard about Docs. Often they asked for his help. He worked with the police all over Italy. Other people knew the big dog too. Some of Docs' best friends were restaurant owners. On his birthday, he could eat all he wanted in any one of their restaurants, free. Memon would lead him from one place to another. At each door, Docs would stop and sniff. He'd move on until he found one that seemed to have nicer smells than all the rest. Then he would go in for his favorite birthday dinner of spaghetti and pork. On Doc's 13th birthday, Maman led him from restaurant to restaurant as usual. Doc seemed to be having an especially hard time deciding this year. "Choose, will you?" Maman finally begged. "I'm getting hungry." Just then they came to a small restaurant. Doc took a deep sniff. He became very still. Only his nose continued to twitch. He quickly pushed open the door and went inside, but Doc wasn't interested in food. Not now. He headed straight for a man who was sitting at a small corner table. The man kept shoveling food into his mouth. He tried very hard to pretend he didn't see Doc. It was no use. Maman recognized the man right away. He was a criminal who had escaped from the police. He was caught now because Doc had remembered his human smell for more than 6 years. Year after year, Doc did his job. In 15 years, he helped catch more than 400 criminals. He has probably cracked more cases than any detective on the force, one police officer said. We consider him one of our best men.